The past week, we have seen a lot of people, including myself, have had a chance to play Marvel Spider-Man 2 early. So this is 50 new details that we have learned about Marvel Spider-Man 2. I do want to mention that these details will contain some spoilers for the game, so you have been warned. Additionally, some of these details have no available gameplay as Sony did not permit us to actually record footage during our early preview event. So let's kick things off with Traversal. By not letting go of web swing, you are actually able to do a loop-de-loop that generates quite a bit of momentum. But this is an ability that you actually have to unlock in order to have access to. This was actually initially spotted by YouTuber Jake Baldino and then confirmed by Insomniac Games themselves. Furthermore, you can also do sideways swinging around objects, such as the tops of buildings, allowing you to essentially continuously swing in a circle as you build up momentum so that then when you let go, you get slingshotted forward with tons of momentum and speed. And speaking of the slingshot, that feature is not just available and will be usable in many different spots, but on certain rooftops, you can access something called the Super Slingshot, or just essentially a much more powerful version of the slingshot, allowing you to once again build a lot of momentum and traverse the now twice as large map. Now, we obviously knew about the epic web wings and the wind tunnels that allow you to boost quickly, but during my gameplay session, I did go on ahead and verify that you can indeed enter the wind tunnels from any which way. They are multi-directional, and you can go on ahead and take advantage of their boost from whichever point you enter them. You can also perform something called the corner tether, meaning that you're able to make sharp left and right turns. And the coolest thing is that this feature is actually available to you both in the web swinging mechanic, but then in addition to that, you can also utilize it when you're using your web wings. All you need to do is pick a direction, whether that be right or left, and hold circle in order to activate this. And once again, this was confirmed by Insomniac Games. If you have enough momentum as you're making your way above a body of water, you can actually water dash or glide slash, I guess, kind of surf across the water in a similar fashion to what Insomniac Games has actually previously done in Sunset Overdrive, which again, I can verify was something that I did manage to pull off when I got my hands on session. The web swinging speed has been increased. The web wings functionality actually has quite a bit of similarity to the gliding mechanics of Batman Arkham games, where you're able to dive down and then as you pull back up, you're able to generate a lot more momentum, allowing you to once again traverse quickly. The acrobatics or the aerial tricks for Peter got an update, allowing him to feel a bit cooler and closer to Miles in terms of those coolness factors. And finally, yes indeed, we have brand new swinging animations implemented. I just wanted to take a quick moment and thank you guys so very much for watching the video, and hopefully you're enjoying it. If you are, please don't forget to smash the thumbs up button, and let's dive into the visual details we have learned. Kicking things off with the fact that the game will indeed support several different running modes, including performance and fidelity, but it will also be able to run at 30 frames per second, 40 frames per second, and 60 frames per second, depending on what mode you select. But all of the modes will support and have ray tracing on at all times. There is actually a battle damage effect slash feature that is implemented onto the suits after being in battle, and I personally saw it present on at least the advanced suit and the upgraded suits. The other cool detail was that it actually did appear differently. So on one of the suits, it looked more like it was actual metal scrapings off the suit, whereas on the other one, it looked like it was a torn fabric. So really great attention to detail. Worry not though, the damage will disappear or fade back to a perfectly looking costume after a little while. The city is incredibly dense. We got more citizens, way more cars, more plants, more trees, and just simply put, more of everything. Speaking of which, the buildings have way more details, including more variety of what you can actually spot through the windows to make the city look more alive and detailed. And you can actually now even spot people inside those buildings. This was one of my favorite details. The webs in the game have that distinct spaghetti webbing design made famous by the comic book artist Todd McFarlane. When I noticed that, I was super duper stoked that they managed to include that in the game. Just like the webs though, the web wings also got a lot of attention. In fact, depending on whatever suit you're wearing, the web wings will adjust accordingly to fit the style and design of that suit. Incredible. And finally, finally, the environments also take a big step up and have way more destructibility, particularly indoors. When playing through a mission at the Emily May Foundation, I was blown away by just how much of the environment was falling apart. It was on fire, wires were sparking with electricity, and it was just absolutely breathtaking. Next, let's talk about combat and gameplay details. Peter has a brand new Rage Mode ability, similar to games like God of War, where by pressing R3 and L3 and having a full symbiote surge bar, you're able to unleash the power of the symbiote and begin to absolutely destroy everything in your path. It's a very, very powerful move. Miles Morales also gets new abilities, and they are of course evolved Venom Shock abilities, or at least we finally found out their names. So the new Venom Shock abilities are now titled the Evolved Venom Shock. You're going to be stopping a lot of crimes in New York City, and when you're dealing with those crimes, there's actually a chance that when you arrive to solve or stop a crime, that the other Spider-Man, the one that you are not controlling at that time, will already be there fighting the crime, allowing you to actually perform a really cool team-up move between Peter and Miles. The adaptive triggers of the PlayStation 5 controller will not be used for just web slinging anymore, but they will instead be also utilized in some of the puzzle mechanics, where you have to essentially match up a required amount of pressure on each trigger in order to clear the puzzle. All normal attacks in the game are able to be parried. There are, however, moves that must be parried, and there are also moves that must be dodged and cannot be parried at all. That adds a lot more complexity to the overall combat system. Both Miles and Peter will be getting some brand new finishing moves, and boy oh boy, they look awesome. And finally, the symbiote abilities in this game are very, very powerful, but in order to prevent you from spamming your symbiote abilities, Kraven's mechanical dog robots actually have an ability where they emit a sonar blast that essentially will lock down your symbiote abilities until you defeat that particular foe and have access to your abilities again. Just giving you guys another quick warning, because this next set of details is going to be spoiler heavy as we dive into some of the story details. If you're a fan of classic villains and their designs, you'll be very happy to know that the Lizard will actually appear at least briefly in his iconic lab coat while going through his transformation sequence from Kurt Connors to the Lizard, and this will all be part of a cutscene. Even though some of the gameplay that we've received makes it seem like Peter and the Lizard are at odds, Peter is actually trying to help Lizard turn back into Kurt Connors because he needs his help, and he will be using a vial with some type of a chemical that he actually steals off of Kraven, and then has Harry help him activate the chemical while at the Emily May Foundation before setting off to chase down the Lizard and try to turn him back into Kurt Connors. Speaking of Harry Osborn actually does know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. In fact, Harry Osborn also knows that Miles Morales is Spider-Man, and they will be interacting. And from my gameplay session, it also became quite obvious that not only does Harry know this, but Haley, Genki, Rio, MJ, and Harry Osborn all know the secret identities of our Spider-Men. Kraven can actually sense the presence of the beastly symbiote when he comes face to face with symbiote Spider-Man. The underground faction from the Miles Morales video game are back, and a lot of their weapon/tech crates are scattered all around the city for you to collect some tech parts from, so that then you could use those in order to craft some suits and other upgrades. Now, I only got to play for around 3 hours, but I gotta tell you guys, the tone of this story is definitely darker and much more serious, and not just because of Peter. I remember distinctly hearing a sequence where Miles implies that he would consider taking out Martin Lee just to make sure that he can't cause anyone else the same type of pain that he caused to the Morales family. The symbiote is most definitely from space, and the meteor that it crashed onto Earth in has the infamous red spiral logo that is often associated with the corrupted symbiotes and the god of symbiotes, Null. The name of the symbiote project internally at Oscorp is actually VNM252, which is probably an Easter egg to Amazing Spider-Man 252, the first appearance of the symbiote suit. And of course, the VNM stands for, well, Venom. And finally, the Emily May Foundation is actually a think tank that is being funded by Oscorp, but has been put together by both Peter and Harry in particular seems to be very passionate about making a difference in the world, healing the world, some would maybe even say, through the research done at Emily May. And finally, buckle in, because here's a rapid fire set of details that can't really be classified under any of the other topics we have covered so far. First and foremost, there are new puzzle mechanics that essentially require you to remove unwanted chemical compounds off of what I would best describe as a chain of atoms. The spider bots are actually back, and they will be a collectible item that has an odd pulsating effect that looks eerily similar to the glitch effect of the Spider-Verse films. The spider bots will also be playable and controllable for puzzling sections, as well as some more stealthy missions. Boss fights get a massive upgrade. They're much more challenging to address one of the common complaints of the previous two games. For example, you can see some of that with the gameplay that Sony has provided us for the lizard fight. And speaking of boss fights will actually now feature a health bar. This was something that I saw present, of course, on the lizard boss fight, but it was also present during a mini boss fight against one of Kraven's brute soldiers. If you want that much more immersive experience, you can now take fall damage, but fortunately enough, this feature is available to be turned on or off as you see fit, and this was actually pointed out by the YouTuber Caboose. This next detail was one of my absolute favorites. When I was playing as Miles Morales in one of the missions, there's essentially a music shop sort of that was being robbed, and as I began chasing them down to try to stop the criminals, it told me that I essentially would not be able to follow both of the trucks. I had to essentially choose which path I wanted to go down. And so I was only able to kind of like, I guess, stop half the crime from taking place, which was very interesting because it made me think, what could have gone differently if I chose the other truck? Would I have gotten a new story development? Would I have gotten a new cutscene? I guess that's something that we're going to get to find out on October 20th. The photo op missions are back, but this time there seems to be much less focus on the iconic buildings of New York City and more of a focus on the people and the culture of New York instead. Oh, and the Daily Bugle's own Robbie Robertson is actually going to be your liaison for all of these missions. And speaking of photos, if you are a fan of the photo mode in Marvel's Spider-Man and Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, fear not, it is back in Marvel's Spider-Man 2, and pretty much from what I could tell, has all the same features. So if you liked all the controls that you had in those previous games, good news for you. Let's talk about suits now. Most of the suits in the game will actually have 4 edit styles in total, allowing you to have much more variety in terms of what your Spider-Man will look like. Keep in mind though, some suits such as the Raimi symbiote suit do not have any edit styles at all, and you would just have that one look. During this early preview event for Marvel's Spider-Man 2, we were allowed to play as 10 different costumes, 5 for each of our Spider-Man. So for Peter Parker, the ones that we had available were the advanced suit, the black symbiote suit, the Raimi symbiote suit, the Secret Wars Civil War suit, and the apocalyptic suit. My personal favorites were the symbiote suit and the advanced suit. For Miles' side of things, we had access to the new upgraded suit, the 2099 suit, the 10th anniversary suit, the Boricua suit, and the encoded suits. My personal favorites were the upgraded and the encoded suits. They will definitely be paying attention to the event of the 2 previous games. For example, I visited the location of Black Cat's hideout from the previous games, and above the entrance door there is now a spray painted image of a Black Cat chibi design, which was really cool to see. One of the things that really jumped out at me during my play session was the fact that there's just simply way more quips now. I mean, you just hear the characters speak quite a bit more often, whether it be in battle or when you're just swinging through the city. You're going to get a lot more dialogue from both Miles and Peter. We obviously knew about the ability of being able to switch from Miles to Peter in the hub world, which was very cool, but if you were looking for any sort of indication about knowing how to tackle which missions, fear not, because missions in the hub world are actually going to be specifically marked with either a Miles Morales or a Peter Parker logo, or I guess in some cases both logos, to indicate to you which one of the Spider-Man can complete that specific mission, or in some cases you could pick either one. You might be wondering as to how exactly does Kraven keep his bases hidden and away from plain sight in New York City? Well, actually, he does that by using a camouflage technology that essentially conceals the bases from the outside. They simply appear like regular, ordinary buildings. But once you cross over that camouflage barrier, you immediately realize that it has been completely overhauled to have the aesthetic and design for Kraven's army. And finally, if you're worried about a lack of variety of enemies, just in that one 3-hour play session, I ran into a ton of different types of enemies, whether it be just basic grunts, armed grunts, and a variety of them, the long-ranged grunts, the mechanical bird drones, as well as the robot dogs, and even the brutes have a bunch of different variety in terms of the different weapons and armors that they come with, giving you a ton of different combinations and a ton of different problems to try to solve using all your brand new combat and gadget tricks. So there you go, guys. Those are 50 plus details for Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Somehow, some way, they continue to make me more and more excited for this game, and October 20th can't get here soon enough. Thanks all for watching today's video. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. That would be very much appreciated, and I'll catch you all on the next one.